Hello, everybody, and welcome to show number 3. Thank you for joining us. By the way, okay, we just want to say on behalf of myself, by the way, for those of you that don't know me yet, my name is Meet Sabiha. I'm a registered career practitioner, and I help you, yes, you, motivated, ambitious professionals who are looking to land their next dream job in Dubai, stop struggling and start thriving. And I'm just going to head on over to my fabulous co-host, let people know that those of you that don't know Trisha, what should they know about you?
Yeah.
What are you doing in Dubai?
Well, fantastic. It's really nice to connect once again. I am Trisha Chapman, the managing partner of Impressive CV. We focus on all of the necessary tools for a successful job application. So these days, that is CV writing, cover letter, LinkedIn, most importantly, personal branding.
Fantastic. And we've got another jam-packed show today. And Trisha, what are we going to be talking about today? What's the topic? What's the theme that we're cracking open today?
Well, following on from our last episode, I really want to come back to the contract. So, if you had listened to a couple of the other not versions, but episodes, and please, if you haven't, make sure that you go ahead and jump back onto those recordings because they are jam-packed with valuable information. But we left off promising you that we would touch on various contracts, especially because there are new changes to the UAE Labour Law. So I wanted to go through a couple of those things. And then, of course, some negotiation tips that you can perhaps, implement once you've received that contract, but maybe you're not quite 100% satisfied.
Oh, I've got a perfect story to share with everybody. So keep watching, keep listening about somebody who's in that position right now, who's leaving one job role, moving into another. And there's a bit of a sticky situation to try and make that transition, creating that resignation letter as well. So if we get a bonus time, maybe we'll get time to cover that as well, Trisha. So in terms of contracts, okay, what are the sort of kind of basics 101 of contracts in Dubai, and do they differ from other parts of the world?
Yeah, it's a good question. So first of all, we could probably take a step back and just recover or reinstate the fact that the UAE has made significant changes to the labour law, that came into effect in February 2022, so this year. So what that means now is that there is a couple of changes from the old rule regulations. Now, a fixed contract. All UAE or GCC employers specific to the UAE have to be on a fixed contract with a maximum of a 3-year period. So before, it used to be an unlimited contract. There was no, limitations of how long that you could work for that employer. But now everyone must be on a fixed contract, maximum of 3 years. And all organizations have got until February 2023 to implement those changes.
Fantastic. Now that's a really good update, and particularly something to factor in whether you're living currently in the UAE right now and you're looking for your next dream job, or perhaps you haven't yet quite got to the UAE and you're thinking about coming. So what are the pros and cons of this new legislation, and why was it brought in, Trisha?
Yeah, so I guess, a couple of things. So perhaps if there's sort of low performers, or perhaps the performance is not up to the benchmarks that the UAE in general is trying to establish and maintain, I guess, or even go above expectations, they can really set the benchmark for those types of employees that they're trying to maintain. Second of all, it can perhaps filter out unwanted talent. Re-signing these people, if you've been there for years and years and years, just because you have, been within that organization doesn't necessarily mean now that you're going to be guaranteed working within that company after this 3-year period. So I guess at the end of the day, you could perhaps call it talent management, filtering out the poor and keeping the good. And there's no maximum amount of time that the employer can renew that 3-year contract. So, you could still be there for 9 years, just means that needs to be renewed every 3 years.
Fantastic. Okay, so for somebody who's maybe in a contract right now working in the UAE, what will that mean for them, Trisha? And maybe this person's thinking about, okay, with this new law coming in, or maybe they were just at a point and a stage in their role now where they're thinking, okay, I'm ready for my next challenge, for whatever reason that might be. What will that look like for that job hunter? And then we'll come back to somebody who's coming fresh
Yeah.
or perhaps looking for their very first job in the UAE.
Perfect. So all employers, whichever organization that's registered within the UAE, they must change every single employee's contract by February 2023 to ensure that they have signed their new contract that states that they've got it as a fixed 3-year term. So,
and Trisha, just coming to that point, because I just want to pick up on something, because maybe somebody's watching and they're thinking, oh, but I work in construction, or I work in IT, or I work in marketing. Is it across the board in all sectors, or is this just specific sectors or government?
No, so it's mandated. So it means that there's a lot of work for the HR guys out there, making all the new contracts, and then of course making sure that everyone has signed it, and a lot of paperwork. But well, fortunately, I guess you could probably say that's the way it is. And they've given a year's grace period to be able to swap all of the employees who are currently located in Dubai. Now, there is some changes as well for those people who have just entered or perhaps on probation period. So the labour law still remains that the probation can be a maximum of 6 months. However, employers must now provide 14 days written notice if they no longer want that employee to be part of their organisation within their probation period. And that is a change because you didn't have to be providing 14 days notice.
Got it. Now, guys, those of you watching right now, okay, you're probably thinking, wow, this is a really heavy subject that we're talking about here, okay? And it's probably one of the last things that you really want to be thinking about when you're job hunting and you're on that recruitment cycle. But honestly, as a career professional, and I know Trisha will probably agree with me on this, these small details make all the difference, because if you're going to all that hard work and effort and energy, to sort of kind of impress employers, get that offer on the table, you want to make sure that when it comes to the contracting part of the recruitment process, you get it right, because the last thing that you want to do is end up either accepting a job or being stuck in a job role. But had you done your due diligence at this point during the job hunting process, you would have saved yourself some heartache and some pain. So I want to come on over now, Trisha, and talk about those people who are coming to perhaps Dubai for the very first time, looking for work, okay? So what tips would you have for them?
Yeah, so I guess I just want to perhaps make one other point about some new changes that have happened, because it really relates to those people who are quite new to Dubai. If you are a new employee, still in your probation period within that 6 month, and you decide that you want to move along and you want to change organizations and, change company, which it's in your right. Sometimes, you come to Dubai and perhaps that the initial job is not what you thought it was and you want to change. You must give the employer 1 month notice if you would like to resign and move companies or switch companies. If you would like to be leaving the country, so you've decided actually Dubai in general is just not for me, no problems, but you need to be giving 14 days notice if you intend to leave the country altogether. So there's some new changes. I think that, a lot of job seekers should be aware of these changes, because you don't want to then all of a sudden receive the contract and perhaps they say, you have to pay out your probation period because you didn't give us the 1 month notice, or, just having a bad name amongst yourself. Dubai recruiters, it's quite a small community. A lot of people know, it's a tight network. You don't want to be getting a bad name if you're trying to go for other work, but you just weren't compliant with the regulations because you were a bit naive and not updating yourself.
And that's a really good point, okay, that naivety, because, when you're doing something new for the very first time, it's only natural to sort of kind of fumble and sort of kind of fall into some of the common traps that people fall into. And you mentioned there about sort of regulation. Are there any sort of kind of common mistakes that you are seeing either before this sort of kind of regulation came in, or even sort of kind of prior to that, particularly sort of kind of, during the pandemic, where you saw people kind of really stumble, and what can our viewers avoid doing? Because I'm really keen to make sure that we impart some tips for the viewers so that they can avoid some of these mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of discrepancy sometimes. Now, I know that a lot of these new changes in labour law has only just, been implemented, a couple of weeks, but sometimes physical contracts or policies from the employer differs from the labor law. So maybe, you know, for example, you've got a German or US company that's got their office in Dubai and their policies have come from the US and they might not match or be in line with the labor law. So it's really important that you are, you know, you've got a copy of your contract and you have read the fine print and you compare it for any major discrepancies to the UAE labor law, because in essence, the labor law is the overarching or the higher law or aspect, the umbrella. And then if something was to go wrong, the law will withstand. For example, you know, how does this translate? If, for example, you left before the contract remained and the fine print said you must pay out the remaining of your contract if you left early, then unfortunately, you know, that would stand. If that's what the labor law supported, you know, in the fine print versus your contract, then you would be remaining to do that. So it's really important that you're reading the fine print of both the labor law, and it's very accessible. I'm happy to pop it down in the comments so people can read it, and your contract, because you don't want to be getting into any situation where you're out of pocket.
Yeah, I mean, that's the worst thing that you want to do. And I know some of you are probably watching this and thinking, I just want a job. I just want to land that job, you know, right? But these things matter, because one thing that I will share at this point is a mindset. How important, and the biggest and the vast difference that I see between those job hunters who are successful in securing their dream jobs in Dubai or any other sort of kind of country or city for that matter, actually, but these principles apply, is there's definitely a difference in mindset between those who are successful and those who are not, who don't quite make it. And one of the biggest things that I see between the differences between, in terms of mindset, between those job hunters who are successful, they do their homework. They sort of kind of take the time to, as Trisha is saying, and, you know, and she's giving you this advice, not because, you know, it's a fun thing to do, because listen, even Trisha and I will sit here and say, listen, reading contracts is not exactly particularly fun or glamorous thing to do, but we do it, right? Don't we, Trisha? We do it because we understand that it's this fine detail that makes the difference. It stops you from getting into hot water. It stops you from ending up in a situation where not only now are you not in a position where you have a role, but now you're owing the company money. I mean, this is not a situation. I mean, I don't know about you, the viewers that are watching, but do you want to find yourself in that situation? I suspect not. So if that's the case, take heed with what, you know, Trisha's been sharing today, because there's some really great knowledge bombs that are being dropped and tips and advice that's been given to you here right now. Regarding obviously contracting. Now, we did promise as well as sort of kind of talking about contracts, as we sort of kind of wrap up that session, we're going to move on to negotiation tips. But Trisha, is there any final kind of words of wisdom, any pearls that you want to sort of kind of share before we move on?
I guess perhaps reiterating the fact, just read the fine print, spend the time, don't just see the salary as the figure and say yes, because honestly, there's a lot of startups out there. There's a lot of organizations that might try and, you know, get as much money from you as possible if things turn pear-shaped, and you don't want to be caught in that boat. So, you know, really know your rights, and it's, you know, worth investing some time or getting some support from perhaps even one of us to read through that contract with you, rather than just diving in deep because you see a salary figure.
I love that. And I love the fact that, Trisha, you brought up the subject of support, because it's so important, isn't it, Trisha, that during that whole sort of recruitment process, like, here's the thing, okay, you can go it alone. And I think for a lot of you watching right now, okay, you'll probably make it. It might take you twice as long. You might, you know, make a few mistakes along the ways, but you will eventually make it if you are that ambitious, driven, you know, job professional. However, why create barriers for yourself when there is this support available? And so, Trisha, you know, we're talking about support, and we're going to be moving into sort of negotiation tips as well. But what do we have to say about reaching out and getting help? Because I know for some people, it's a very alien concept, this idea of going out and looking for people who can help with, you know, sort of kind of whether it's interview practicing, whether it's, you know, looking at contracts that we're talking about here today, whether it's, you know, negotiation skills that we're going to be moving on to. Why do you feel it's so important that people reach out and get help? during
I
the
think
recruitment
at
process.
the end of the day, you need to be prioritizing your objectives, right? So if your objective is to land an opportunity within Dubai within a certain time frame, you then need to be able to put support mechanisms in place to ensure that that process is efficient, it's enjoyable, that you're not being led down the garden path, as they say, and you reach your goal in the most efficient way. And to be able to do that, to filter through a lot of the crap, if I could say,
Yeah, you can.
plain language. Yeah. On Google, on internet, sometimes on Facebook, someone did say this. Just speak with someone who's in the market, within the industry. There's so many people out there that you don't always have to be paying for significant services. A couple of relationship building questions, or perhaps even, in your own negotiations of packages. So for example, if you're working with Sabia and I on something, you could perhaps say, look, including your services, can we also please touch on this within your package? So just sort of, putting down your own objectives and ensuring that whatever support services you do go with, then that they are meeting your own objectives.
I love that, Tricia, because I mean, there's that cliche saying, isn't there, that no man is an island, and actually anything that we do in life, isn't it? Anything that we do in life which is what you're kind of, nodding to, is that, we need that help. We as human beings, we are, we like being part of a collective, we like being part of a community, and job hunting should be no different. We would, if we wanted to get fit, we would join a fitness club. If we, any other aspects of our lives, don't we find community, we find people. So job hunting should be exactly the same as well. Now we've got a few minutes left before we wrap up today's show. And I know we promised the viewers that we'll talk about, we're going to give away some negotiation tips during the sort of kind of contracting process. So Tricia, if you had sort of, I don't know, your top 3 tips when it comes to negotiation, you've got, so this is specifically, you've done all the hard work, you've found your dream employer, you've impressed them, you've aced them, you've got, to the interview stage, then you're now at the point where they're making an offer to you. What tips do you have for our viewers?
Cool. So I would definitely love to dive, into perhaps a deeper discussion, purely do an episode just on this. So I would maybe give some highlights.
I love that. And Tricia, in fact, okay, if you're watching right now and you want us to do a deep dive, let us know in the comments section. Let us know, okay, type yes, more deep dive about negotiation. Because like Tricia said, this is a whole subject. We can talk about this till the cows come home. But let's give a few sort of kind of, I guess, a few initial tips for people as we wrap up today.
So first of all, it's really important, don't just look at the initial figure. So for example, if you are written or handed a document that says 100,000 dirham, for example, don't look at that as the sole decision that you should be negotiating. So for example, things that you could negotiate on, or perhaps consider, is there career progression? Does the contract perhaps say, renegotiating your job title within 24 months or 12 months of the employment? Does it include bonuses? Does it include perhaps the concept that you could have a return flight home once, if it doesn't mention it, or twice a year, rather than going for, say, 120,000 dirham, or for example. A couple of other things you want to make sure, of course, is the new working hours. Does it include Friday as the half day? And if it doesn't, then maybe you could say, instead of negotiating a higher salary, can you have the full Friday off? So there's a couple of little things that, rather than just jumping to say, I want a higher salary, that you can negotiate annual leave, for example, having an extra week annual leave, but keeping the base salary the same. So I would definitely love to do a deep dive on this, because I think that there is some great negotiation tips that you can consider and look at the bigger picture rather than just solely that number.
And for those of you that are interested, and we've kind of got you a little bit intrigued and excited about learning more about negotiation, let us know, what part of the negotiation do you struggle with the most? Let us know, so that we can make sure in the next episode we can cover those topics, because these shows are all about giving value, helping you, the professional, motivated, ambitious job hunter looking for your next dream job in Dubai, land it with ease, and and so that you can stop struggling and stop thriving with your and land your dream job. So as we wrap up today, I just want to sort of kind of share. I did mention earlier that I talk about one of the clients that I was working with just this just a few hours ago, who was in the position where he's been given an offer, and he was like, okay, Sophia, I need a quick 10-minute conversation with you. Can we just jump on a quick call and do a quick session? So this is the beauty of when you work with professionals like Trisha and I, is that you have access to experts who can sit down with you. And he was like, okay, I'm just kind of finalizing the package, and I'm not sure exactly, what I want to include, and exactly what Trisha just mentioned. For him, yes, the base salary was important, but also was the bonus scheme, but also as well, he was keen, he wanted to kind of create that work-life balance, and that was really important to him because that was a value that he was looking for, and one of the reasons why he was looking to move into this new role. And so, getting paid holidays so that he can do the things that he wants to do with his family and his friends was really important to him. And so we sort of kind of discussed that, and that we explored that. So definitely, I think what Trisha's been talking about here today, the tips that you're walking away from today's show, is going to help you create that ease and get clarity, so that you can remove some of that confusion and overwhelm and stress that is associated with job hunting. Final thoughts, Trisha, as we wrap up?
I think I said it once, twice, and maybe even 3 times: read the fine print. That's all I can, really make sure that we harp on. I would love to have a full episode on salary negotiation and go through all of those single points, and perhaps even bring up, a contract, and then negotiate how you can walk your way through it.
Fantastic. So if you're excited and you want to see us cover this topic, let us know in the comments. And if you've enjoyed this show today or any of our previous shows, by the way, make sure that you subscribe, hit that bell button to follow us. Thank you so much for joining us today. Goodbye.
And thank you, Ramadan Kareem, for all of those who are celebrating.